Okay, so imagine for a second uh, trying to sleep outside on like a freezing night,
Hmm.
with only a thin blanket and the cold, hard pavement. It's a pretty grim picture, right?
It is, and sadly, it's the reality for a staggering number of Americans. Nearly 800,000 people sleep without shelter every single night in this country.
Yeah, and we're not just talking about numbers here.
Right.
We're talking about real people, veterans who served our country, families struggling to make ends meet, young people who deserve a fighting chance.
Exactly. And that's what we're going to be diving into today. We're tackling the issue of homelessness in America, and we're going to be looking specifically at a new plan to address this crisis.
Yes, so this deep dive, it all centers around this plan called Haven for All.
Mm.
And we've got a copy of the business plan right here. And it's ambitious. It aims to do nothing less than end homelessness in the U.S.
It really is a sweeping plan, and it's not just about providing temporary shelter. It takes a much deeper look at the systemic issues that contribute to homelessness in the first place.
Right, it's not just about putting a roof over someone's head. It's about addressing the root causes.
Absolutely.
And the plan really paints a stark picture of just how big this problem is.
It does.
I mean, it's not just a social crisis, it's an economic one too, right?
Yeah, the plan points out that homelessness costs the U.S. an estimated $12 billion every year. And that's just for emergency services alone.
Wow. Yeah, that's a huge burden on healthcare, law enforcement.
Yeah.
Really the whole social safety net.
Right. And of course, the human cost is immeasurable.
Yeah, and the plan points out that more than half of the homeless population are dealing with chronic health issues. I mean, things like mental illness and substance abuse.
Right. And you can see how those things can easily trap someone in a cycle of homelessness.
Yeah, for sure. It makes you wonder, what kind of effects this has on communities as a whole.
Well, it's definitely a ripple effect. Homelessness impacts everyone in a way. Property values, strain on local resources, even public safety.
Absolutely. So with all that in mind, how does Haven for All propose that we break this cycle? I mean, what's their game plan here?
Well, the plan is based on 4 key pillars: permanent supportive housing, wraparound support services, workforce development, and then nationwide coordination. It's a multi-pronged approach, basically.
Okay, so it sounds like permanent supportive housing is really the foundation of this plan.
It is. And they're proposing something pretty bold. They want to build and renovate a staggering 200,000 affordable housing units.
Wow.
And these aren't, temporary shelters. We're talking about permanent homes that can give people stability and a real chance to rebuild their lives.
So it's a huge undertaking. I mean, how much is all this going to cost?
Well, the estimated price tag is $30 billion.
Okay, that's a hefty sum. But it sounds like they're going for more than just providing a roof over someone's head.
Yeah.
What about those wraparound support services? What exactly do they involve?
So this is where the plan gets really interesting. They're not just giving people keys to an apartment and saying, good luck. They're also providing a whole range of services to help people thrive.
Okay.
So we're talking mental health counseling, addiction recovery programs, financial literacy training, even childcare support.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive. I mean, are they basically trying to equip people to become self-sufficient, not just provide, temporary relief?
That's exactly right. And of course, to make that happen, you need a lot of resources and coordination.
Yeah.
And that's where their workforce development component comes in. They're proposing to invest $4 billion to create clear pathways to employment.
Oh, wow. Okay, so how would that work? I mean, are they like creating their own job training programs or something?
Not exactly. They're going to be partnering with corporations, trade unions, existing government initiatives. The idea is to leverage existing infrastructure, create a network that can connect people with job training, apprenticeships, maybe even job placement programs.
So they're not reinventing the wheel, they're just making the wheel work better.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together, but nationwide coordination, I mean, that's got to be key to making this work.
Oh, absolutely. This is a massive country with vastly different needs in each region. A program of this scale needs like a centralized system to manage everything.
Yeah.
And that's where the nationwide coordination part comes in. They're proposing to create a dedicated entity to oversee the whole implementation process, manage resources, track progress, and, even adapt the program as needed based on real-world data.
Okay, so it's kind of like an air traffic control system, making sure everything runs smoothly across the country.
That's a great analogy.
But let's be realistic for a second. How do they plan to pay for all of this? We're talking about billions and billions of dollars.
Right. Well, their funding strategy is actually pretty diverse. They're looking at government grants, corporate partnerships, philanthropic donations, and even a new approach they're calling social impact investing.
Social impact investing. What's that?
Well, you can think of it like this. Um, with traditional investments, you're putting money into a company because you expect to make a profit, right?
Right.
With social impact bonds, though, you're investing in positive social outcomes. So in this case, reducing homelessness. So investors would earn returns based on the program's success in meeting specific goals, like the number of people transition to stable housing, for example.
Where they're trying to align financial incentives with social good.
Exactly. It's a pretty innovative concept.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Okay, so this is all incredibly ambitious.
hmm
It really makes you wonder, what would the payoff be if they could actually pull this off? What kind of impact could this have on the country?
Well, the potential benefits are huge, and we're not just talking about saving money, although that's a big part of it. They're aiming for a complete transformation in how we approach homelessness in America.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. Let's dive into those potential benefits in our next segment.
So we were talking about the potential impact of Haven for All, and one of the things that really jumps out is the economic upside.
Yeah, it almost sounds too good to be true, right? Like ending homelessness could actually save the country money.
It might seem counterintuitive, but the numbers really do add up. Right now, it costs cities and states an average of $35,000 per year for every person experiencing homelessness.
Wow, $35,000 a year per person. Where does all that money go?
Well, think about the constant cycle. Emergency room visits, shelter services, interactions with law enforcement, those costs really add up. But the Haven for All plan, with its focus on permanent housing and wraparound support, they estimate that costs could drop to around $12,000 per year per person.
Okay, so that's a savings of what? Like over $20,000 per person each year. And if you multiply that by 800,000 people,
You're looking at a potential annual savings of $18.4 billion.
that's huge. I mean, imagine what we could do with those resources if they weren't being spent on managing the crisis.
Exactly. Think about the investments we could make in education, infrastructure, even other social programs.
It really highlights how interconnected all these issues are, right?
Mm,
Addressing one can have a ripple effect across the board.
absolutely. And the economic benefits go beyond just cost savings. Haven for All has the potential to create a ton of new jobs.
Yeah, I was just thinking about the sheer logistics of building 200,000 new housing units.
Right. The plan estimates that construction alone would create over 1.2 million temporary jobs. And those are just the construction jobs. You've also got to think about the people who will manage and maintain those units once they're built.
Yeah, and all those support services they're going to need social workers, counselors, healthcare providers.
Exactly. So you're talking about a whole ecosystem of jobs being created, both temporary and permanent. And then there's the boost to local economies when people who were previously homeless start earning incomes and participating in the marketplace.
Okay, so it's kind of like a virtuous cycle, right? As opposed to the vicious cycle we see with chronic homelessness. It all sounds really promising, but let's be realistic here. Are there any potential challenges or downsides that they might be overlooking?
Of course, no plan is perfect, and Haven for All acknowledges some potential obstacles. They've actually outlined a few key challenges and some strategies for addressing them.
I imagine funding must be a major concern. They're relying on a pretty complex mix of government funding, corporate partnerships, philanthropic donations.
Yeah, that's a big one. Economic downturns or shifts in political priorities could definitely impact their funding streams.
So how do they plan to mitigate that risk?
Well, they emphasize the importance of building strong long-term relationships with stakeholders and diversifying their funding sources as much as possible. They also see those social impact bonds as a potential way to create a more stable, outcome-driven funding stream.
Right, because investors would have a vested interest in seeing the program succeed. Okay, what about the logistics of actually building 200,000 homes? I mean, finding suitable land, especially in urban areas, can be a nightmare.
Well, the plan isn't just focused on urban areas. They're envisioning a mix of urban, suburban, and even rural housing developments.
Okay, that makes sense. But even then, you've got zoning regulations, building codes, not to mention potential pushback from communities. Not everyone's going to be thrilled about having affordable housing developments in their backyard.
That's true. And the plan recognizes that community engagement is crucial. They propose working closely with local governments and community organizations to address concerns, build consensus, and make sure these developments are integrated thoughtfully into existing neighborhoods.
So it's about building trust, right? Not just buildings.
Absolutely. And then there's the human element. We can't forget that each person experiencing homelessness has their own unique story, their own unique needs.
So even with the best intentions and resources, there's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Exactly. That's why the plan emphasizes personalized care plans, trauma-informed approaches, and ongoing support.
So it's about empowerment, not just handouts, giving people the tools and support they need to rebuild their lives.
You got it.
Yeah.
But we also have to acknowledge the broader societal context. Attitudes towards homelessness can be a real barrier to progress.
You're right, there's still a lot of stigma and misunderstanding surrounding homelessness.
Exactly. And that can lead to fear, apathy, even discrimination. Haven for All recognizes that shifting those attitudes is a crucial part of creating lasting change.
So how do they plan to do that?
They've proposed a pretty comprehensive communication strategy. They want to educate the public, challenge stereotypes, and really highlight the human stories behind the statistics.
So they're not just building houses, they're building understanding.
Right. And they're planning to enlist the voices of people with lived experience, people who've actually been through homelessness.
Yeah, because hearing from those who have been there can be incredibly powerful.
Absolutely. They also want to bring in voices from volunteers, community leaders, experts in the field. The idea is to create a chorus of voices that can speak to the complexity of the issue.
I like that. It's not just about talking about the problem, it's about showcasing solutions and the people who are making those solutions happen.
Exactly. Okay, so we've talked about the problems, the solutions, the potential challenges and benefits. It's clear that Haven for All is incredibly ambitious, but is it actually achievable?
That's the big question, right?
It is, and it's going to depend on a lot of things. Political will, public support, effective implementation, and of course, securing that funding.
It feels like a long shot, but even if they don't hit every target, just the fact that they're aiming this high is pretty impressive.
You know what I find fascinating about Haven for All? It represents a real shift in how we think about homelessness. It's not about managing the problem, it's about ending it. It's a bold statement.
Yeah, it really is. It makes you wonder, what if this approach could be applied to other issues? Poverty, addiction, other social challenges.
That's the beauty of a big vision, right? It inspires us to think bigger, to imagine a future where problems that seem impossible to solve, maybe they're not so impossible after all.
Speaking of big ideas, what about their marketing and communication strategy? I mean, this kind of initiative needs to reach a wide audience to gain real traction.
They've definitely got a plan for that. And it's just as comprehensive as their approach to the issue itself. They're planning to leverage both digital and traditional media to spread the word.
So they're using all the tools in the toolbox.
Exactly. A robust social media campaign, targeted email outreach. They're even developing a dedicated microsite to provide more in-depth information and engage supporters.
Okay, that's great for reaching younger generations, people who are already active online. But what about those who aren't on social media?
They're not forgetting about them. They're going to be using traditional media outlets, press releases, interviews, event coverage, that sort of thing.
Smart move. Cast a wide net.
And they're not just relying on passive media consumption, they're also planning events that allow for active participation. Fundraising galas, corporate partnership summits, community volunteer drives.
Yeah, it's about giving people a chance to get involved on a personal level, not just through donations, but through their time and actions.
Exactly. And it's not just about raising awareness. It's about crafting a message that really resonates with different audiences. They've come up with some pretty powerful slogans that capture the essence of their mission.
Oh, any favorites?
One that stands out is a haven for every American, eradicating homelessness one home at a time. It's concise, hopeful.
Yeah, I like that.
They also have one that focuses on collective action. Join the movement to end homelessness for good. It's a call to action.
Inviting people to be part of something bigger than themselves.
Right. But they're going beyond just slogans. They want to share personal stories, narratives of people who've experienced homelessness and how Haven for All helped them turn their lives around.
Those kinds of stories can be so impactful. They break down stereotypes. They help people connect on an emotional level.
Exactly. And they're planning to feature the voices of volunteers, community leaders, experts in the field, too.
So it's about creating a chorus of voices, showing all the different facets of this issue and the collective effort it's going to take to solve it.
Exactly. By weaving all these different perspectives together, they're creating a really powerful narrative.
It sounds like their approach to communication is just as comprehensive and thoughtful as their approach to the issue itself.
I think so. They seem to have a solid roadmap. But of course, it all comes down to execution.
Okay, so let's shift gears now and take a closer look at their plan for implementing all of this. How are they going to actually put this vision into action and track their progress?
Right, let's dive into their impact framework, which outlines how they plan to measure their success and make sure they're on the right track to achieving their goals.
So we've talked about the vision, the strategies, the potential challenges, all that. Now let's get down to brass tacks. How do they know if this thing's actually working? How do they measure impact? Are they making a difference?
Right, that's where this impact framework comes in. They're very big on setting clear goals, measurable goals, and then tracking progress towards those goals. It's like the old saying, you can't manage what you don't measure.
So what are they measuring? What are those key metrics?
Well, the most obvious one is the number of people they actually get into stable housing.
Okay, makes sense.
But it's not just about putting a roof over someone's head for a night or two, you know? They want to make sure that housing is sustainable.
Yeah, sustainable.
Yeah.
So what does that look like? How do you measure that?
They'll be tracking how long people stay housed, whether they can maintain that housing on their own without needing constant support, how they're doing overall, once they've transitioned out of the program.
So it's about setting people up for long-term success, not just a quick fix. Okay, so number of people housed, and then the sustainability of that housing. What else are they looking at?
Well, remember, workforce development is a big part of this whole thing.
Right.
So employment rates after people go through job training, that's a big one. And not just whether they get a job, but can they keep it? Are they moving up, building a career? It's about economic empowerment, really.
Yeah, breaking that cycle of poverty. Okay, that makes sense. What about health outcomes? How do they measure the impact on people's well-being?
That's really important to them. They'll be looking at things like, are fewer people ending up in the ER? Are hospital stays shorter? Mental and physical health improvements, reduction in substance abuse, things like that.
So it's really a holistic approach, looking at the whole picture, not just one narrow aspect.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got those social metrics,
Yeah.
but of course they've got to keep an eye on the financial side too, right?
Absolutely. Remember, they're projecting those big cost savings, like $18.4 billion a year, by reducing reliance on those expensive emergency services.
Right.
So they'll need to track that very closely. Are those savings actually materializing?
Yeah, that would be a game changer if they could
Yeah.
free up that much money and put it into other critical programs. Anything else they're measuring? I feel like we've covered a lot.
Well, one more thing, community engagement.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Because ultimately, solving this problem, it's a collective effort. So they'll be tracking things like volunteer hours, donor participation, just the overall level of public support.
I got to get the whole community on board.
Exactly.
Okay, so they've got a pretty robust system for tracking progress. But what's the ultimate goal here? What are they shooting for?
Their stated goal is to get all 800,000 people currently experiencing homelessness in America into stable housing.
Wow. All 800,000. That's a huge goal.
It is. It's incredibly ambitious.
Yeah.
But it speaks to their belief that ending homelessness is possible. It's not just a pipe dream.
Yeah, it's setting the bar high. It's inspiring. I mean, it's hard to even imagine what kind of impact that would have if they could actually pull it off.
It would be transformative. But even if they fall short, even if they only get halfway there, think of how many lives would be changed.
Yeah, no doubt. What strikes me about all of this is just the shift in mindset that it represents. It's not about managing homelessness, it's about ending it.
It is. It's a whole different way of thinking.
But I think that message has implications far beyond this one initiative. It makes you think maybe we can do this with other problems too, poverty, addiction, all those complex social issues.
It's a challenge to all of us to think bigger, to believe that change is possible.
And that's what we need more of. Bold ideas, big visions, and the commitment to make those visions a reality.
It's not easy.
No, it's not, but it's worth fighting for.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've explored the problem. We've dug into the Haven for All plan. We've looked at the potential benefits and the challenges. And I think it's safe to say that this is an incredibly ambitious, even audacious initiative.
It is.
Yeah.
But if they can pull it off, even partially, it has the potential to change millions of lives for the better.
And not just the lives of those experiencing homelessness, but the lives of all Americans.
Right.
So as we go about our day, as we encounter people experiencing homelessness in our own communities, let's remember that they are not invisible. They are not statistics. They are human beings.
Yeah.
And they deserve our compassion, our support, and our commitment to creating a world where everyone has a safe and affordable place to call home.
A world where Haven for All is not just a plan, but a reality.